welcome back. Always good to say that Tim Vickery is joining us from Brazil. Rio, I still presume. Tim, hello?
Yeah, Rio o Mio by the CO, as Zero Mostel referred to it in The Producers. How are you, Joe? You all right, mate?
I'm very well, thank you, yeah. Are you Rio for life, if that's not too personal a question now? Are you there till the end of your days?
Probably not, no. It's a depressing place at the moment, not just because of the pandemic. But I think a significant part of the country have just parted company with any reality. So I don't know. I mean, if I didn't have a family, the elections in just over a year's time, I don't know. I honestly don't know. It's also not the greatest place to be old. So I don't know. The jury's still out on that one, I think.
Well, look, we'll fix you up a nice little cottage here in Ireland overlooking the sea. How something like that, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, one of the perils of freelance life is there's no there's no pension, So I feel like I'm going to be a hamster on a wheel for a fair few years yet. And here, Brazil is kind of where I make my living. So yeah, I'm probably here for the foreseeable. But it would surprise me if I'm in 85 or something, if I get that far, if I'm still here.
Sorry,
who knows? Who knows?
That's a hell of a tangent I sent you on there. You probably got your family listening, going, "What? News to us?"
Yeah, sometimes I'm glad that I don't speak a lot of English, or any, so I can get away with talking about them on air.
What is broadly, because I only really hear about Brazil generally when I check in with you, and now anytime we've spoken thus far over the past 18 months between Bolsonaro and COVID, it's been an absolute mess. I don't suppose the situation is resolving itself in any great way against his best efforts?
No, it's not. Just the amount of people begging and that on the streets is... this country has serious problems. When it's even pre the pandemic, it's got serious problems. I mean, the big question hanging over Brazilian public life is, what are you going to do with all these people? How are you going to include all of these people? Is there a way that these people can be transformed into included in society in some kind of productive thing, or you're going to follow the Bolsonaro route and just see huge swathes of the population as a public order problem. That's and then live behind bars. And this was the thing when I first moved over here. It was the thing that most surprised me. Society that lives behind bars. It wasn't what I'd kind of imagined. I'd imagine. I'd bought some of the myths about free and easy and spontaneous and so on. And perhaps you obviously you bring your own perspective to everywhere you go, and I will go to my grave a council estate kid. It's what I was. It's what I'll always be. So I'll always look at things from the idea of people who've had to work their way up or are trying to work their way up. And I look at Brazil and I look at its future, and it terrifies me. The questions of how the urban masses are going to be included in some meaningful way in society. And that totally transcends the Bolsonaro government. It kind of transcends everything. Yeah. And I can't see any future for the country really as an exporter of raw materials. Even if the agro-business sector gets everything that it wants and does well, because it just doesn't create enough quality jobs. Ireland has lived with some of these things over the years, hasn't it? Especially before the European Union, it became an exporter of people. So I see huge problems with the central question of how do you include all of these people in some kind of modern economy that doesn't destroy the planet.
Well, we won't solve that in the next 7 to
It's above my pay grade, Joe Molloy. I don't know about yours, but it's certainly above mine.
So, to matters of less importance, there is an international window looming. This is all a touch complicated, and obviously we were very obsessed over here with Ireland's and performance and all that kind of stuff. So, I guess the genesis of a situation here is that Brazil is on the UK's red list and vice versa. Yep. So travel there is not so easy, and this culminated obviously quite dramatically in the Brazil-Argentina game where all hell broke loose. And there seemed to be, and I guess this is the question, you can explain this to me, there seemed to be then the possibility of almost, I guess, a kind of a retaliation, as in, well, if you lot didn't release your players for international duty, we can invoke some rule whereby they can't play for your Premier League clubs at the weekend, and I don't think that came to pass, but there was great confusion. So it's all very complicated and all quite a mess. You're quite good at simplifying these things and presenting the information to us. So what is going on here?
Where do you want to start? Do you want to go over the game itself, the game that we only had 5 minutes and 10 seconds, or do you want to go over the situation for the next lot of FIFA dates in under a month's time?
Give us a glance to the past for a moment there, because it was quite amazing.
It was extraordinary, wasn't it? Absolutely extraordinary. I can only kind of explain it really as a kind of cocktail of bureaucratic complications, negligence, bad communication, incompetence, arrogance, trickery, excessive zeal, and deficiency of common sense. And if you put all of those things in together, you got what we had. I don't think that it's Brazil versus Argentina until you get to the question of what happens to the points. And then it becomes Brazil versus Argentina. And FIFA will have to decide. I mean, obviously, we'd like the game to be played, but the big problem here is when. You know, there aren't enough dates as it is without going in inventing extra games. Yeah. I think what it was, more than anything else, is the bureaucratic complication of a new factor, which is the necessity of those coming from the UK to enter into quarantine. Football thought it could blag its way through. Football thought it had an agreement with the South American health ministries for players to get a free pass. And that's the way that the game has continued. And there are massive travel restrictions inside South America at the moment. The border's closed, the frontier is closed between Brazil and Argentina, but not for footballers. And I think football banked on its own power to force through a waiver. There was bad communication in that had Argentina applied for a waiver, I think they would have got it. But they didn't. They did at the last moment, and the rejection came through at the last moment because it seems there hadn't been a full disclosure at the airport of the 4 Premier League players that they had been in the UK at some time in the previous 14 days. My experience of Brazilian authority has led me to the conclusion that the thing that there's a certain and this isn't necessarily a criticism, although as journalists we're often the enemies of bureaucrats, aren't we? But the thing that enrages a certain type of Brazilian authority figure more than anything else is the idea, the perception of the country as something where anything goes. You know, you can come over it. You think you can come over here and do exactly what you like, and that just enrages them, and that I think was the root of the problem, because they had 2 or 3 days of cat and mouse with Argentina. No, it was obvious there was a problem on the Saturday before the game, and they were trying to catch up with the players and get them to sign stuff, and Argentina, thinking with the support of the football authorities and with the support, I think, of the Brazilian FA, thinking that they could blag their way through it, and that enraged the health officials all the more. And the agency that does this is connected to the health ministry, but it's also separate. So it didn't see any agreement with the health ministry as binding. This agency controls the borders. So the fact that these players, it seems, had not given complete information on the coming into the country, that created a problem for which there was no solution. Now, obviously, common sense would have been, these are fully vaccinated players with negative tests. Play the game, and then they go straight back to the airport anyway, and then deal with it at the airport. But I think that their noses have been put out of joint by getting the runaround for a couple of days. The root cause of all of this is the decision to go ahead with the Copa America, and a lot of the players were warning about this at the time. Remember, especially Brazil's players and other players and other coaches, they said that we shouldn't be doing this, because that was not only the pandemic, it was also the view that we should be using this time to catch up on World Cup qualification, because we're behind schedule with World Cup qualification. Now, CONMEBOL, South America's UEFA, they gave as a justification for ploughing ahead with the Copa America the idea that the tournament would help the teams prepare for the World Cup. So they were explicitly saying that the World Cup is more important than the Copa America, which was an extra Copa America. It was the second extra Copa America since 2016 and the 4th Copa America since 2015. It was unnecessary in sporting terms. Try telling that to Lionel Messi, who's finally got an international trophy, and I know that'll be a difficult one. But it would have made far more sense, while they had the players there, to use that time to catch up with World Cup qualification. They didn't. Now, that meant that the international calendar now in South America, from the start of June, 4 months ago, 2 or 3 months ago, to the end of next March, 10 months, 21 games.
Oh.
That's a lot of football.
Wow.
That's half a club season on top of the normal season. So the South American calendar there for the national teams has shown no give and take.
So are we anticipating other problems at the next international window and similar issues with games maybe being abandoned, or Premier League managers doing their press conferences saying, well, I'm not sure if I can play my Brazilian players tomorrow? Or will the waivers be applied for and everything be done by the book and exemptions granted and all that kind of thing?
I don't know. We can speculate. I'm told in the end, the South American countries, which was Brazil, but also Chile and Paraguay, they didn't push the button that would have prevented those the players from playing for 5 days.
Yes, but they could have easily, couldn't they?
They could have. Right. Yes, they could have. It was within their rights to do it. Even had it been done, had they pushed that button, that's still a good deal for the Premier League clubs, because what's the alternative? The alternative is they fly off. Massive travelling time. They play 3 games. They come back, and then 10 days when they're in an airport hotel. They can't train. So in comparison with that, 5 days where they can't play but they can train is a result.
True.
So that's the reason the button wasn't pressed was because they need the cooperation of the clubs in October. October is another triple header. Now, I mentioned we came out of the Copa America. We still had 12 rounds of World Cup qualification to play, and only 4 FIFA dates, which is 8 games. How are you going to fit in the other 4 games? So FIFA invented an extra FIFA date at the end of January. So there'll be 2 games at the end of January, and it transformed September and October into triple headers, 3 games, meaning that instead of ending on Tuesday night, giving the players time to get home for the weekend, it ends Thursday night. So the earliest they'll be back is probably Sunday morning. So that's 2 concessions that have been made by FIFA to the South American national teams. So again, the European clubs, who are always reluctant to release players, they never like it, but they're confronted with a situation where there's been no give and take from the other side. So why should they give anything? So in exchange for cooperation, especially in October, another triple header, the South American national teams didn't push that button.
Okay.
And what they are hoping for is October will go away, will go smoothly. Now, at least there's more time to plan this, but we still have a problem with this quarantine period in the UK. Now, Brazil can waive this quarantine period for footballers coming in, but it can't. Brazil or South America can't waive the quarantine period in the UK. That's up for the UK to decide. 2 things are possible. One is that football gets a waiver. I'm told, but every time I ask people there, I'm told that politically that's a non-starter. The other is that quarantine thing is removed. Personally, and I've got to confess, I've got a dog in this race, because I'd love, I haven't seen my mum for a couple of years. She's 84. No, I'd like to get back. I can't see the point of this quarantine period for fully vaccinated people. I can't see, if it's not necessary in the other European countries, why is it necessary in the UK?
You're different, Tim. That's why.
Yeah, British exceptionalism. Yeah, it's always been the way, isn't it? So the not pushing the button and allowing those players to play.
Yeah.
We're still gonna have problems next month.
Right.
If that quarantine period in the UK
is intact,
is still there.
Okay. Listen, I suspect we'll be talking then come around that time. Tim Vickery, always great to have you on. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.